couple of housekeeping issues, or items rather. First, for next class on your syllabus, I have listed a screencast that was tentatively. It is now official because I finished the screencast. So please do take a look at it. I'm hoping it's one of the more fun ones. You'll have to let me know. So take a look at that for next class. Also, and I'll be sending an email reminder. You'll see here on the front page of the Twent course, if you would send me your exam schedule, you will find the tentative schedule basically in the registration information on the website. On the Twent site, I have a link here that will get you straight to the PDF, and the exam schedule is on page 23 of the PDF. As I said, I will send you an email with all this information to remind you. Basically, what I need to know is basically whatever classes you have, the date and time of the exam. And the reason for that is I will then proceed to sit down with everybody's schedule and figure out which days will work out so that all of you can take our exam without a conflict. Probably with such a large group, it'll be a choice of 3 days. Some of you may have a choice of 2 or 3 days. Some of you will only have 1 day that's available. But I will make sure that there is at least 1 day available for everybody. And then what happens, just FYI, I talk to Dean Casper and let him know what our dates are, so he will make sure for all of you not to schedule any other conflict exams you may have on our day. So if you could get that to me, then we will schedule accordingly. Okay, on the extra credit, just an FYI, was due today, but mostly due to the storm and my schedule getting a bit messed up. Essentially, I'm just giving those of you who haven't done it yet an extra couple of days. So if you're still interested in doing it and just didn't get there, you have until Thursday. And if you have any trouble with that, let me know. Okay, and I also wanted to mention, because I had a question last time on the syllabus from before the end of the year. I had a draft syllabus up for those of you registering who are interested in finding out what the class is all about. Some of the dates have changed, so you definitely should go by the due dates on the syllabus that's currently up on the website. It's no longer draft, and actually I have updated it to indicate that our screencast is no longer tentative. So if you are walking around with the draft syllabus, toss it. Okay. Any questions before we dive back into treatises? So today we are going to finish secondary sources. We're going to continue our look at treatises, move on to law reviews, talk a little bit about advanced searching techniques when we look at law reviews, because law reviews is one of the material types that it's best to use those techniques, or useful anyway. And then we will look a little bit at some non-legal searching. This is a legal research class, but you may find yourself in need of some non-legal research, so we'll quickly go over some of those techniques. And then we will go over the assignment, which I'll distribute at the end of class. During all of that, we'll have a couple of workshops, so we've got a lot packed in. I expect we will go till the end, till 7 o'clock. So without further ado, let's get started. We left off looking at treatises, looking at Lexis, and we had done a search, and we had narrowed using the filters, and by the way, that filter narrowing is going to be a theme throughout all of the services, and if that sounds a bit generic to you at the moment or hypothetical, I'll mention exactly what I mean by that as we're looking at the various services. But for now, I wanted to point out a couple of aspects about Lexis regarding treatises. And again, treatises, we're going to be looking at treatises when we want in-depth treatment. So if you have a quick and dirty research, you just got to get it out in a few hours. Treatises may or may not be the best source. Of course, if you're doing a search and that's what comes up and it answers your question, that's great. But you're not going to specifically seek out, oh, I need to narrow my search to treatises if it's really just quick and dirty. But what I wanted to show you on Lexis, amongst the ways of finding treatises, of course, again, you can do a search, as we discussed. Lexis also has these practice pages, and this is a relatively new feature on Lexis. by jurisdiction and by area. I'll show you the areas quickly. So if you can fit your subject in these areas, great. So you can see healthcare, perhaps insurance. Also by jurisdiction, if you decide you really need, if you're doing a New York practice issue, then probably you want to go by jurisdiction and choose New York. And just to give you a sense of what these practice pages look like, and again, it would look somewhat different for the topic, but for jurisdiction, it just brings, it filters up to the top, if you will, or bubbles up to the top. Top sources here of the different material types. This is actually a great outline of the course, just in slightly different order. Some news and analysis available on Lexis. So you can see because we're in New York, it highlights the New York Law Journal. And then I have already designated some favorites. So the favorites that are relevant to New York, Lexis has pulled in for me. And then here are some topics that might be of interest within New York, which I imagine for the jurisdiction practice pages are going to be most of the topics. And if I can do this quickly, I'll give you a quick sense of practice area. So again, rather than go by material type, because honestly, you're going to be practicing in areas of law rather than, oh, I need to look at treatise versus encyclopedia versus ALR. You just want an answer. And so that's why Lexis is trying to pull all this together so you don't really have to worry about material type. And you can find, hopefully, useful sources. So again, Lexis pulls in some specific areas for our now topic, healthcare law. Okay. So I'm actually going to go back to our New York. And again, one way to find useful materials, if you did want to find treatises, is through the practice page. And you see lots of good New York practice materials. And I'd have to say that Lexis is definitely going to be better for you for New York practice because some of the major treatise titles are published by Lexis. So again, they're only going to be available on Lexis. So Warren's Weed is one. Actually, New York Business, obviously not practice, but business. And then, of course, we've talked about New York jurisprudence. So you can do this any number of ways to search it. You would just click on Get Documents. And it's kind of random, I think. Honestly, if I were going to New York jurisprudence, I would just, again, another review of how to get to various, and New York jurisprudence, since most of you seem like you're planning on staying in New York jurisprudence is a great title just to remember. And that's because it's Encyclopedia of New York Law. Remember, we looked at encyclopedias, we looked at AmJur, we looked at CJS. New York Jur was the New York version. And that's where we, reference librarians, will send attorneys coming in with just about any New York question. And so heading here, again, we can see the table of contents. Another way to, again, pull up a treatise or find a treatise is to just type in a word and see what comes up in these various sources. We ended our session last time. I'm trying to pull up this particular I'm trying to pull up the source we were looking at last time when we finished class. So it's not coming up that way. So I'm going to go to sources. So you're getting a good review here. I don't know why that's not coming up. All right. So we'll just, granted, what I'm trying to show you is an important aspect of looking at treatises, and this is actually one of the questions that came up in the screencast that several of you, and essentially I mentioned this in the first class. Whatever source you are looking at, you want to be aware of how up to date it is. And so what you want to do is look for this I link. I was trying to pull up the other treatise, but this one will do just fine. And this will tell you essentially, this is the 2012 edition, and it should be updated regularly. So it's not exactly specific, but that I link on Lexis, when you're looking at basically any source, will tell you how up to date it is. Sources like New York Jurisprudence, like an encyclopedia, will be updated. Sometimes they'll just say annually or periodically. So you may not get a very concrete answer, but you do want to check that I link on Lexis, and as we'll see on Westlaw, to see how up to date your materials are. Another good question that came up is from the screencast is, if something's from 2006, is that too old? How do I know what's too old? Unfortunately, again, the answer is going to be your standard law school answer. It depends. It depends on the areas. I mentioned to you last time I did a research project way back when, where the controlling case was from the 1800s. Certainly a secondary source from the 1800s is too old, unless, of course, you're doing legal history. What you want to worry less about, oh my goodness, is this too old, and more is, okay, I now know it's 2006. I now know I have about 10 years. There may have been changes. If you're looking at something from 1997, you may want to be even a little more skeptical. Ideally, you find something more recent, but if the best thing you can find is older, then just be aware of that, and then just be aware that you need to do some serious updating. So any question about treatises on Lexis? We'll be looking again at doing searches on Lexis and secondary sources when we look at law reviews a little bit later. Okay, let's move on to Westlaw then. Go back here to our Westlaw home screen. And again, you can plug in Westlaw if you know. So hopefully now I've convinced you that New York Jurisprudence is the place to go. And what I like about Westlaw, Lexis supposedly is catching up. So we'll see how well they do. But at least on Westlaw, when you do pull up a title, look here to the right to see what other features of that title you might find. You might have a hard time seeing it. Hopefully you can see it there on the screen. Here's where you would find the index. I personally am not a fan of indexes online. I find them more difficult to use than the books. Now, obviously, if you're home and there's 2 feet of snow on the ground, you'll settle for the index at home if that's what you need. But I will honestly, again, I'm just letting you know, if you find it tricky to use an index online, you're not the only one. And that's pretty much the point of that. So again, finding materials on Westlaw, you can just plug in the title. Now, of course, New York Jur is an example of an encyclopedia. Let's move on to treatises. And here you can browse the home screen. So we've talked a little bit about this. You can drill your way down, and if that's how you prefer, if you prefer to narrow beforehand, that's totally fine. I tend to do it afterwards, with one exception, which I'll tell you about in a moment. And I should mention the handout. I know it's kind of crummy. The Lexis Advanced handout. Lexis is developing its own browse screen. In theory, we could see it on the Lexis homepage when we log in starting in February. I say in theory because even our Lexis rep isn't willing to commit to a date. So, in other words, it could be February, could be March, who knows. So one day you'll log into Lexis to do an assignment and say, oh, look, that looks different. And that's part of just search. That's one of the challenges of researching online, is that they change things without any notice, and you just have to adapt. We've been assured by our Lexis people that nothing's getting taken away. This will just appear on top of what we already see when we log in to Lexis. And you can see, if you take a look, if you can read the small print, it looks kind of like Westlaw. What a shock, huh? Competitors figured out, oh, people like that. I guess maybe we'll do something similar so we can compete. So we can see how it works already on Westlaw. Again, if you want to narrow ahead of time, you click on secondary sources. And again, if you really wanted to narrow the treatises ahead of time, or by jurisdiction. Typically, when I'm looking at treatises or really doing secondary source research, generally, I will not narrow by jurisdiction first, unless, as I said, I absolutely know I just need to do your practice, and practice rules elsewhere are going to be totally different. What I will tend to do, and again, this isn't better, this is just the habit I formed, so whatever works for you, I do my search first. So I'm just going to throw in our liability, HMO search, and then I'll narrow here, and this is what I mean by our post-search filters. I've done my search, the filters are on the left, just like Amazon, and now I narrow down to whatever it is I want. So we see secondary sources, and again, we've kind of done this already, so this is more of a review. Again, I can narrow by jurisdiction. But this is where I'll tend to narrow by publication type. Actually, what I'll do is I'll look at my results first, and I'll discover, oh, look, there's that ALR that's not quite relevant. I think the first entry we got was something from Pennsylvania, or that's the second entry, totally not useful. And Tennessee Bar Journal might be too jurisdiction specific for us. But here we see that proof of facts, and again, we'll be talking about proof of facts later on this semester when we talk about practice. And what we get surface up front tends to be more law review articles, of course, because rather than an entire treatise title, we have individual article titles, so they're just many, many more journal titles than there are treatise titles, so that's what we get a whole lot more of. That's going to be great when we look at law reviews, but for now, if I'm interested, I want something more in depth, or a law review is going to tend to be more what the law should be, right? Those of you on the journal, you edit a lot, you're looking at a lot of articles, and it's professors or experts in the field talking about what the law should be. If I really just want to know what it is, and as practicing attorneys, that tends to be more what you're interested in. Again, I might go to treatises. So here under publication type, we see ALR, our friend ALR. If we wanted to narrow there, I need to remember to expand out this publication types, and then I see some of the familiar ones, so law reviews, legal newspapers, and sure enough, I can narrow here by texts and treatises on Westlaw. And then with Westlaw, not one of my favorite features, I have to remember to click on Apply Filters. I have a tendency to just wait for Westlaw to do it automatically because other services do it that way. So again, here we have this first one is Pennsylvania, not of interest. But it does surface the Amjur proof of facts, and we get some other causes of action. We get some other useful, potentially useful. So here you see modern tort law, liability, and I'm just scrolling down here to litigating tort cases down here. And so here we see what a treatise will look like. And as we did last week on Lexis, always recommend taking a look at the table of contents. This was a pretty quick and dirty search, right? Liability, HMO. I didn't even spell out health maintenance. So let's take a look at the table of contents and see what around the section that Westlaw randomly pulled up, which might be a good section. I'm not saying it's not. And see what else might be of use. So here we say preemption of state law claims by ERISA. Again, my particular section may or may not be the most relevant. I haven't read it yet, so I can't say for sure. But I know for sure I want to check out this other section, right? Because we now need to know this whole ERISA preemption thing. So again, the table of contents is inordinately useful. And again, you want to be on one of my themes, bibliographically aware. In this case, and this will be true on Lexis too, sometimes up here in the heading, they'll tell you how up to date it is. Date is updated December 2015. So that's pretty good. Any questions? Okay. take a look at Bloomberg. We haven't done too much of that yet. Bloomberg is giving us trouble in terms of accessing it. So what's been happening to me pretty much consistently is sometimes I'll get right in and sometimes I'll get this. Hopefully, I was actually in earlier, but obviously I have lost my connection. We'll give it another second or two, or we may just have to come back to Bloomberg. Sometimes you have to give it a couple of tries, or actually, you know what, let's try that. And don't ask me why that happens. So basically, when you do get your assignment, if you're having trouble with Bloomberg, just be a little persistent. I am trying to work with Bloomberg to get that fixed, because obviously that's not a good thing. But sometimes, especially these intermittent problems, just take a while. Anyway, so here we are in Bloomberg. And again, in terms of I'm not a huge fan of browsing on Bloomberg. You can go into the search and browse. Again, with Bloomberg especially, I think much better off just doing a search first. And with Bloomberg, we have to do what's known as a Boolean search, and we will be reviewing these Boolean, what are called Boolean connectors or terms of connectors a little bit later on today. So let's search all legal content. And let's hope we get a result. Bloomberg has always been a little bit on the slow side. So again, post-search filter, we can take a look at our material type. Whoops. And so we can see books and treatises. The material, the treatises available on Bloomberg, a bit more narrow in scope, just because they're newer guys on the block, and they tend to be from maybe 8 or a dozen publishers, and not that much from 8 or a dozen publishers. A lot from this Practicing Law Institute. Some of you will get to know PLI, that's what it's their abbreviation, how they're known, very well when you get out to practice and have to start worrying about continuing legal education. To be a member of the New York Bar, you have to update your credentials every 3 years, and you have to earn, I think it is 36 credits. Don't quote me on the numbers, I'm not an expert. And one way you do that is to attend seminars given by these various companies who exist to fill this need, and one of them is PLI, and they put their course materials online. They're actually quite useful. They are geared to practicing attorneys, right? Because it's the practicing attorneys who have to get this CLE credit. So some of them can be quite useful. So that's what we're seeing here, PLI Practicing Law Institute materials. And you can, again, filter further on the left by PLI or other different titles available on Bloomberg. We'll be taking another look at Bloomberg a little later on. Remember we looked at BNA last time? Some of you had a little difficulty getting there. Actually, thanks to you all pointing out that difficulty, we're going to change that on the library homepage. So soon, we hope, when you click on that BNA link, it'll actually bring you to that nice subject list rather than that funky general information that wasn't useful for much. So things do change for the better occasionally. Okay. So that is essentially finding treatises on Lexis, Westlaw, and Bloomberg. A little bit of a quick run through, but pretty much will be using the same principles that we've started to establish in terms of material type and post-search filters, using an iLink to be bibliographically aware and make sure that you know how up-to-date your material is. On Bloomberg here, they should really tell you. So here, Bloomberg, they'll give you general information sometimes, and that's where you would get it if they have it for this publication. Because we're in the middle of Medicare, I just randomly chose that. Or sometimes you'll have to poke your way around, which is a bit of a pain, I grant you, and look for either introductory information, front matter. Lexis and Westlaw have heard librarians like me complain a lot about not being able to find the dates, so they've given the iLink to make that more obvious. Bloomberg still has some work to do on that. So if we were to scroll down here, eventually we should find a copyright date. So, oh, looks like 2015. But that took a lot of work. Okay. Questions? Everybody good? Lexis, Westlaw, Bloomberg? We'll be doing a workshop in just a little while on exactly this, so you'll have a chance to give it a try yourself. And if you have questions, I'll wander around and answer them as best I can. So a couple of you asked about, and a very good question, and actually is a place to find treatises or really any books, Google Books. How many have used Google Books for one reason or another? Yeah, you? Okay, great. Google Books are great when you find something, and it's, in my opinion, entirely hit or miss. So, of course, I just Google Books, and I'm just going to throw in health plans liability. And my main complaint with Google Books is you may find a title, but then you may not get access to it because of copyright restrictions. And especially for legal research, when, of course, you do want something more current, is probably going to be in copyright. Whether it's available on Google Books, honestly, I don't know enough about copyright law to tell you the whys and wherefores of when things are available and aren't available and how much. But you basically take your chances and see what you find. But obviously, it's a nice, easy search. It's free, so it's certainly worth a check. I would tend to use Google. I might start with Google Books, honestly. Again, it's free. I wouldn't spend a lot of time. Or I might tend to use Google Books, again, depending on what I have available to me in Lexis and Westlaw. And we'll be talking about that in a little while, too, in terms of pricing. And see, I might use it for secondary materials, again, depending on what's available to me. If it's too expensive on Lexis and Westlaw because of our plan, it's out of plan, then Google Books becomes even more useful. So Essentials of Managed Healthcare. And again, going ahead and clicking on Google, I don't need to show you that. But good to remember it's there. And again, want to be checking for dates of publication and be aware of how up to date your material is. Another way of finding treatises, and honestly, I wouldn't do this that often. I would do this only when you have to, what's known as boil the ocean. You heard that expression? That is, you just have to find everything you can possibly find because you're working with a $1 billion issue and you just need to get everything that's possible to get. And because then, if that's the case, then you could probably use what you need on Lexis and Westlaw, probably have access to it anyway. And I would say because a lot of the legal materials that are available that are going to be useful are going to be available on one of those. So WorldCat is going to become useful for you, I would say, more frequently when you need to go outside of the legal realm. So, for instance, in our issue, we're interested about liability of an HMO. And we've talked a little bit about negligence of the HMO being one of our legal theories on how to hold them liable. Well, negligence, what? On how they administer the plan, perhaps, right? But I don't know about you. I don't know the standard for people working in HMO and how they decide whether or not to cover somebody. If you're going to establish negligence, you have to establish that they did not meet the standard of practice or care. That was one of our search or our brainstorming terms. So I might go to WorldCat to maybe learn a little bit about how the healthcare industry works. Actually, I go to Google Books for that as well to see what they had available. WorldCat.org works similar to any catalog. So you've seen a little bit of how Lexicat, Hofstra's catalog, works. So for worldcat.org, health plans. Might try liability, I might just try management. Again, be creative in your search terms. Now what WorldCat's going to do is it's going to tell me, A, the title of something that exists, and it will tell me what libraries I might find it at, which may or may not be useful, because if it tells me some library in California, obviously that's not very useful. But it might also help me if I have access to interlibrary loan, which you all do here while you're still at Hofstra, and again, depending on where you go, you may or may not have a library with the ability to do interlibrary loan. You then may be able to get access to a title. And again, if you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar deal where you have to boil the ocean, then it might be good to know about this. I would say you will use worldcat.org very rarely. Spending time on it, it's good to know. Several of you asked, so I wanted to show you and talk a little bit about it anyway. Oh, and Blue worldcat.org, one of the questions on the screencast was, apparently the Blue Book requires you to cite to print sources first rather than online. I'm not a Blue Book expert, by the way, so we won't be talking Blue Book much, if at all, in class. But to determine whether a print title exists or the title was born digital, as they say nowadays, actually WorldCat would be the place I would go. So an answer to whoever question that was, that would be my best answer for that. Any questions about WorldCat? Okay, so having talked a little bit about the WorldCat catalog, and WorldCat, by the way, is basically a catalog of many different libraries' catalogs, which is why you can tell what libraries. So let's just take a look at this quickly. That's why you can tell what libraries might have any particular title. And again, if it's in California, at least for me, not very useful. But you can see you have a find library. So here, not surprisingly, Library of Congress has this title. Another place in D.C., Pennsylvania, Michigan. So you think I was making that up about California. They're pretty far afield. Again, I find that less useful and more just establishing that it exists. Perhaps it exists in print. So having looked at a combination of many different libraries' catalogs, let's take a look at Hofstra's library catalog. And since many of you are staying in New York, if you're staying even more locally, again, as I mentioned, you will always be welcome at the Hofstra Law Library as alum. You can access our catalog from anywhere on the planet that you have web access. And you are more than welcome, if you do search our catalog and you see a title, you're more than welcome as an alum to come use it here in the library. Unfortunately, once you do graduate, we don't have the infrastructure to charge a book out to you, so you would need to come in to use it. We also have some online resources that are available to you, certainly now as students and then once you become alum. So here in the library catalog, and actually this page is also changing. We seem to have a theme today of changing web pages. And I'm frankly not sure I'm supposed to show you this, but that's what it's going to look like. I have inside scoop since it's the library's homepage we've been talking about fine-tuning it. So that's what it will eventually look like. And what you will see what you may see on your, well, you're not looking at this page. Eventually, you will see a link, some additional links across the top here. Because I'm attached to the projector, it's not showing the links. It has something to do with the mobile-specific aspect of the web page. Web pages are optimized to, if they know you're mobile, they show you something slightly different that they think is better for you on a mobile device. Unfortunately, it's not better because it's not showing me the link. So the main link you're losing up here is the catalog link. There's also general information and other stuff. But down here, you can scroll down and search the catalog as well. I'm actually going to go back to the old view only because I'm not sure that the catalog, because that's not a live page, I don't know that the catalog is functioning yet, the catalog links. Okay. So you saw the screencast So again, never a bad thing to start with keywords. So we'll start, and notice with my catalog search, notice on WorldCat and now here again on Lexicat, I'm a lot more general. I'm a lot broader than I was on Lexis or Westlaw or Bloomberg. And that's because I'm not searching full text of everything on Lexis, Westlaw, Bloomberg, where it's likely my terms will show up. I'm searching on a catalog is not full text. A catalog is basically what librarians call bibliographic information. And what that means to normal people, title, author, and subject headings. So we'll be talking about subject headings. Basically, librarians sit down and decide for every book, this is on this particular subject, this particular subject, this particular subject. And they have predefined subjects that they choose from and match up the books. Some books get multiple subject headings because they're on a bunch of subjects. Some only get one. So when I'm searching a resource that is broader, isn't full text, I'm going to choose broader terms. When I'm searching full text, I'm going to search much more narrow terms. So here we have a title, Contemporary Issues in Healthcare Law and Ethics. That sounds like that could be fairly interesting for our topic. And I was just telling you about the subject headings, and sure enough, here they are. And I can click on these to find more works in our library catalog at Lexicat that use these subject headings. We'll be using subject headings a whole lot more when we look at an index to law journal articles, but honestly, the concept is absolutely identical. It's classifying by subject whatever it is you're looking at, and then using that classification to find other works on that particular subject. But I want to focus on our treatise because the other thing I want to show you is, again, ways of effectively using treatises. We looked at using the table of contents on Lexis and Westlaw, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to access the online version, but the online version will be our substitute for print because I can't find 21 copies of the same book to have you all look at the same time. We're going to sort of pretend we're looking at print by looking at the online ebook because that's essentially what it would look like in print. So some of you may or may not get an interim login. I'm not exactly sure when that happens if you're following along. But what we can do, and what I wanted to highlight here, again, you can see the table of contents, so we might scan through it, I might expand, but let's first take a look at the index. You saw an example of using an index again on the screencast. I'll just review it again because you will find yourself using indices. And now here's an exception. It's not really an exception, it's the difference between print and online. The online index, as I said, when I go on Lexis and Westlaw, it drives me nuts. I'd rather find it in print. Because this is essentially a picture of a print index, I find this to be a little more useful, although honestly I find it more difficult to navigate than just flipping pages, but that could be me. So taking a look at the index, we can go down, and so I'll start in, let's see what, so we don't waste too much time. Let's look at HMO. So we see healthcare. And sure enough, okay, HMO, Health Maintenance Organization, and get references here. So taking a look at this, ERISA immunity, 197. Vicarious liability, we've been seeing that a little bit. We haven't read too much yet, but that might be useful. So why don't we try taking a look at the other things. This is another reason why I don't like if your mouse jumps around, which this trackpad tends to do. So we'll have to go back. actually didn't. I was looking to see just if it continued on the top of the column, but there's nothing really that interesting up there. So basically, so let's try pages 196 to 7. One nice thing about online is they do give you some navigating. So just type in the page, and so here we're looking here in the chapter of the law of tort liability. Just scrolling up to the beginning of the section, because 197 was in the middle of the section, and so here we see malpractice in the context of cost containment and managed care. Sound relevant? Yes, no, maybe alternate Tuesdays, or almost an alternate Tuesdays in February, but not yet. Yes, no? Crickets, as they say. But hopefully you will agree silently as going through here. We can see HMO mentioning and liability, so it would be of interest. And again, hopefully I am repeating myself. As I said, that's my goal. And again, going to the table of contents to see what might be useful. So we have patient care issues, legal and ethical issues in insurance and managed care. So I'm definitely going to be expanding these. See what might be useful. And again, so your ways of using a treatise, index, table of contents are going to differ depending on what systems you're on, what they have available. Lexis is working on getting indices, but you won't find too many yet. Westlaw has a few more. Bloomberg, not really. Obviously, the ebook, the print equivalent online, and of course the real print, which we used for Amjur, our first class. Okay, any questions? Then let's dive in and take a look at some treatises for workshop. This is the same thing of just passing around in two directions. So again, I'm going to ask you to find treatises on the 3 different services on either the topic you used last time, or if you prefer, you can choose a new topic. Either way is okay. And again, for the updating information, you'll want to look for the iLink. On Lexis and Westlaw, Bloomberg, you may have to navigate to the front matter. Oh, yes.
Sorry.
Okay.
I can't like.
Am I in the way, or this is in the way?
I like when you stand in front of the computer.
Okay. Is it better if I stand here?
Yeah, that would be perfect, but then I hope I don't block it.
No, that's
good.
Oh, does it block it for you?
when you stand there, it's perfect.
Okay. So, and is it this? So this isn't blocking.
Yeah, no, it's just when you stand.
All right. So what we'll have to do is I'll move. I need to move everything over so I can reach. You'll just have to be very careful about the forks.
Yeah.
I may need to get an extension for the.
Thank you.
Let's see how far that's going to take me. So I'm good here.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. If I drift, just kind of get my attention.
Thank
I will try not to. I promise.
Right.
Any questions as I figure out? You're gonna have to, if you're coming out, watch your step on the wire here. I'm gonna have to get an extension for this.
Yeah, you can probably connect it there. Should I?
Yeah, could you unplug it?
Yes.
Oh, I got it. Space is so tight here.
Yeah.
No, that's
No.
good. Let's leave it for now. Just gonna have to hope.
Yeah.
I'll figure out something for next time. See, it uses articles, not just law articles, but articles across the board. So actually a great place again for that non-legal research. Well, done plenty of Google searching, so I'm not really going to do that, but what I am going to talk about and use Google are basically some advanced searching techniques on Lexis, Westlaw, we'll talk about advanced searching in Google another time, but these advanced searching techniques are needed and necessary basically because computers, even our good friend Google, are stupid. Yeah, I really said that. Computers are stupid. I say that because unlike us human beings, they don't really understand language. I'm sure you've all heard about artificial intelligence, and maybe someday, maybe even in your lifetime, probably not mine, but for right now, simple concepts. Like one of my favorite concepts, cats. You know, long furry beasts, ears, whiskers, tail. Computers do not necessarily know that cats and felines are around the same concept. Yes, cats, we usually think of cats as house cats, and felines are lions, tigers, and pumas, oh my. So you, as the intelligent human being, need to translate for the computer. And I'm going to use our buddy Google as an example. Actually, not so much in articles, but I'm going to briefly go to case law. How many of you are 2Ls? So you all did the FLS program last semester. And some of you were with Professor Selby. You probably remember I was wandering around in those sections. And in one of them, so I don't know if you experienced this or not, you all probably remember you were talking about drunk bicycling, right? For those of you 3Ls in the FLS program that you did not get to experience, there was a research component, and Professor Selby did a problem regarding whether or not you could be held liable roughly for drunk bicycling, whether it's illegal or what the parameters were in actually the state you're using was New Jersey, which is why I just narrowed to New Jersey courts. So in one of the sessions, and again, I don't know who was in it, Professor Selby talked about drunk bicycles. B-I-C-Y-L. And I just want to make sure I get this. And it turns out, according to Professor Selby, and I'm going to take her word for it, that the leading case in Jersey is State v. Johnson. So beauteous, Google Scholar pulls up drunk bicycling. But what Professor Selby did in one of the sections is, as she was talking about it, she was talking about drinking while being on your bicycle, right? Same concept. You're either drunk or you got drunk by drinking, right? You know, we all know that that is the same thing. Google, however, drinking on a bicycle. State v. Johnson, if it comes up at all, comes up later on in the next couple of pages. So simple tense of a verb, Google can't figure out. Now, as it turns out, Lexis and Westlaw are better at it. I played around after this happened to Professor Selby. I played around with it afterwards and realized Westlaw and Lexis did better. Google not so much. So the point being, computers don't know the simplest equivalencies. That means you need to think about it. So we're going to talk about Boolean searching as ways to help computers be a little bit smarter. Now, sometimes the natural language searches are great. Honestly, our HMO liability searches not been too bad, right? So there's nothing bad about doing a natural language search and coming up with good results and saying, okay, the computer wasn't so stupid this time. But the point being, again, the tools for your toolbox, having those tools for when the computer just doesn't get it and realizing, all right, computer's being stupid, I need to help translate into human language what the computer is searching. So let's dive into Westlaw. And I'm kind of doing a whole bunch of things at once here. So we're talking about advanced searching. We're talking about using advanced searching for finding law journal articles. I know you all know how to search Lexis and Westlaw regularly. And the other thing I'm doing, which is a bit funky, is I'm going to do a quick talk on pricing. Now, many of you did the extra credit. Again, have till Thursday if you're still interested and haven't made it there yet. But basically, the way Lexis and Westlaw work, obviously Google's free, Lexis and Westlaw work is wherever you are working, whichever service they have a contract. And in that contract contains a total different variety of materials. So in New York, if you're working for a very small firm, or maybe you hang out your own shingle, you might contract with Lexis or Westlaw just to have New York materials, because you only work with state issues. Maybe you'll contract with Lexis or Westlaw to have New York federal, and New York state issues. But then if you have New Jersey, you have to go out of your contract. So basically, you pay your monthly fee for your contract, and whatever is in your contract, you don't pay extra for. Whatever is outside of your contract, you do. So one of the best pieces of advice I can give you in terms of legal research, so capital letters, wherever you wind up working, for the summer, for good, find out what's in your contract. If you've got a librarian, talk to the librarian. If you're in an organization that doesn't have a librarian, talk to whomever the managing partner, associate, business manager, however they do it in your organization, whether it's government, whether it's a corporation, whether it's a law firm. Find out what's in your contract and what isn't in your contract. And trust me, many of them will be very impressed you need to ask as a fresh newbie out of law school. So file that away in a big to-do wherever you start working. So whatever you have in your contract, you will not be charged for. Whatever's outside of your contract, then it gets a little funky. And it's a lot funkier on Westlaw than it is on Lexis. And yes, I am leaving out Bloomberg intentionally because Bloomberg's a flat fee. If your organization subscribes to Bloomberg, they just pay whatever they pay per month, and they get everything on Bloomberg. The all-you-can-eat approach is how they describe it. So Bloomberg's a totally different animal when it comes to pricing. On Westlaw is the most complicated because you can have different ways of getting charged for materials outside of your contract. Again, if it's in your contract, you don't get charged extra. Outside, you might be charged per minute. You might be charged per transaction, and that's just how your organization contracts it out. And what you get charged for when, again, it's outside of your contract is for document viewed. So you can search to your heart's content. The minute you click on a document to view it, that's when you get charged, again, if it's outside of your contract. I'm going to say that 100 more times, I hope. So we can see here what outside of your contract, so that's 3, just kidding. You might get charged per minute, per transaction. On Westlaw, you also get charged for document delivery, whether it's downloading, emailing, or printed. That's not the case for Lexis. And again, I'm not going to ask you, you're not going to get quizzed. This isn't going to be on your exam. This is for your knowledge and understanding. And also, I will be referring to cost-effective searching, so you have an understanding of how stuff gets charged. So you can see it's stuff's outside your contracts, what you'll get charged on Westlaw, whether you're on a per minute, per transaction, and in the middle here is when you decide to have it delivered to yourself. Again, email, download, print, whatever. And I referred earlier to treatises. The secondary sources tend to be what rack up the big bucks. So really get a sense of what you have available. A lot of smaller practitioners tend not to go with secondary sources within the contract because that makes the monthly contract fee more expensive. So you may not have secondary sources in your contract. Very possible, because that's what's going to go first if somebody is on a tight budget, if an organization's on a tight budget. So that's where knowing about Google Scholar and Google Books and, well, Bloomberg you probably won't have access to if you've got another contract and working for a small organization, because they tend to only go with either Lexis, Westlaw, or Bloomberg. So again, you see some of the secondary sources. So per document, so you go to Journals Law Reviews, $40 just for one single view of a single law review. And if that single law review isn't very good, you figure out, you go to another law review that's another $40. Trust me, that can add up very, very quickly. And again, it's per minute versus per transaction here on Westlaw. And you can see some of the other news sources and so forth. And again, this is outside of your contract, but again, for smaller organizations, a lot, if not all of the secondary sources are going to be outside. So I'm trying to teach you how to use Lexis Westlaw for secondary sources, but you want to be very aware of what your contract is wherever it is you're working. Again, as well, obviously while you're here in law school, Lexis and Westlaw is available to you pretty much all you, well, definitely all you can eat. You can be on 24/7. Here in the law school, we don't have every single database that's available to pay our or commercial customers. There are some titles we don't have. You probably will run across that over the course of the semester for this course where you get outside of your subscription. Lexis and Westlaw have decided they don't want to give it to us law schools because they want us to buy it in print. So you may encounter that, but for the most part, you'll see everything. But again, when you get out, you will not. So you want to have a sense of some availability outside of Lexis and Westlaw of some of these secondary sources that can be so expensive depending on where you're at. Okay, any question on Westlaw pricing? I know that was a fast run through. It was kind of a repeat or review of what you saw in the extra credit, a little bit of both. So let's talk about advanced searching and Boolean searching on Westlaw. So as I've been telling you, I tend to like to do a search first. I'm going to go back to all content here. I tend to do a search first and then narrow with my post-search filters on the side. Advanced searching on Westlaw is the example, is the exception to that. The other E word is the exception. And the reason for that is the advanced search. So what I want to do to access the advanced search on Westlaw is I want to get, before my search, pre-search filter, as narrow as I can. So if I'm interested in law reviews, I'm going to narrow down to law reviews. And you'll see why I want to do that in a moment. So secondary sources, I'm not going to texts and treatises as we were before. I am going to go to law reviews. And notice I can narrow to restatements. We will not be talking about restatements. That's why actually I created the screencast for you. Restatements are something that you will use infrequently. When you need them, they're going to be incredibly valuable because they will cover that basic concept of law that you learned in first year and then use the restatement to cite to. But in terms of researching them, it's pretty much the same as what we're doing for law reviews, for treatises, and that is doing a search and then narrowing to whatever material type you're interested in. So we could have gone to restatements. We instead are going to law reviews, and now at this point is when I'm going to go to my advanced search. Again, I'm in the pre-search mode. We haven't run a search yet. And the reason I wanted to get down to law reviews of Westlaw before I search is so that I get this advanced search template specific to law reviews. I mean, you can get a generic advanced search template. Frankly, I don't think it's all that useful, so it's why I'm not showing it to you. And the reason it's so useful is it gives me, specific to law reviews, the different part of the law review I can search. And for law reviews, that's particularly useful to search the title. How many of you have done your regular search on Lexis and Westlaw for law reviews and found a whole bunch of law review articles that mention your terms but have nothing to do with your issue? Anybody? Okay, good number of hands. Thank you for being honest. This advanced search, this title search, is one way around that. We'll talk about the index in just a little while. That's the other way around that. So again, our search actually was pretty good with regard to the law review. But if you run into that, this advanced search title is where it gets interesting. And here's where we're going. One place we are going to plug in our Boolean connectors, which I will review for you in just a moment. How many of you learned Boolean connectors first year? And, or, /p/s? Okay, a few of you. So for some of you, this will be a bit of a review. For some of you, perhaps a little more. So I just want to make sure I get all my typing in here, and then I'm going to copy this so I don't have to do this again. If you see a typo, please say so. I'm not the greatest typer in the world. So in this advanced template, you have to use a Boolean search. You cannot do a natural language search. Westlaw will just read it all as you want every single word you've typed in every single document. what I'm doing is I'm telling Westlaw I want the word liability. The exclamation says I want liability, liabilities, libel. So I truncate it at the common point. So liability after the B, I will get libel as well as liability. And if you write the words out, you'll see B is pretty much the common point. The handout, by the way, the other handout, legal search operators, this is actually a help screen off of Bloomberg. It's the same for all three services. You only have to learn it once. The one, does everybody have? Yes. The one thing you'll notice on Bloomberg is they made, well, we'll talk about it in a second. Okay, so you have that handout there. By the way, all the handouts are also on the Twin site under the link handouts. So, liability, /P within the same paragraph. So the English language is expressed in broader ideas in paragraphs, narrower ideas in sentences. So /P tells Westlaw, and Lexis and Bloomberg, I want this within the same paragraph of, now I have my three different ways of expressing the entity that we ultimately want to sue. I've been talking about HMO, right? That's my shorthand. But HMO doesn't always work. So Health Maintenance Organization is what it stands for. Again, computers are stupid. Sometimes it knows that HMO really is a health maintenance organization. Sometimes your computer won't. And then we discovered sometimes this whole entity is referred to as managed care. I put phrases in quotes to tell Westlaw, hey, I want these words appearing right next to each other together. This is a phrase, like self-incrimination is a phrase. Health maintenance organization is a phrase, so it's in quotes. And then finally, and this is where it gets a little funky, and if this is a little sketchy, don't worry about it, it happens to everybody. Ask if you get confused. When I want several aspects of a search grouped together, most of the time it will happen as it is now when I'm talking about synonyms, different ways of expressing the exact same idea. Cat or feline, HMO or health maintenance organization or managed care. I want Westlaw to pull up any document that expresses our entity that we want to sue, either any of those terms, HMO, health maintenance, managed care. I want any of those, because they're pretty much the same, mean the same thing, within the same paragraph as libel, liability, etc. And because we're in the advanced search template, we're searching all of that in the title. Now, Westlaw and Lexis also requires us, when we're using this advanced search, to use these terms and connectors. You use the natural language, plain language, whatever you want to call it. Generally, Westlaw will do it up here in this box, but if you're using this template, then you need to use those terms and connectors. What Westlaw does is it creates the advanced search for you. As you can see, it says advanced. Rafi, question? Am I in the way again?
No, it's good, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no.
I tend to move around a little bit and then I forget. Okay, so let's click on search and see what we get. So as you can see, negligent credentials, so we're seeing about negligence in HMO. Again, honestly, our plain language search seemed to work pretty well. So this particular issue may not be the best example to use as why you would want to use it, but many of you expressed the difficulty of doing searches in other issues where you did do a search and it didn't work very well. So you can fill in the blank for when it might be useful. Okay. Another advanced feature on Westlaw is sorting. We can sort by date, we can sort by most cited. Depending on what you get, what your issue is, both can be useful. I'm noticing, at least for the first couple we have here, our dates are pretty old. And especially with the law review article, because a law review article is talking about what the law should be, I'm thinking there's so many of them written, hopefully I can find something a little more recent than 1997. So let's sort by date. And you can see I've already clicked on this one, HMO liability. After, again, that case we've seen a couple of times, Aetna v. Davila. Definitely jotting that down on my pad to look at later. And by the way, several of you in the screencast questions asked about a research log. Unfortunately, we're not going to have time to go into detail, and honestly, it's a very personal sort of thing, what works best in terms of a research log. What works for me, maybe because of my generation, is I like to write things down. I have different pads that have different functions. So things I need to check, pad, and then I jot things down. Places I already checked, it might be on another pad. Maybe you want to create notes, or there are all sorts of organization apps out there you could do that with. What I did do is, again, on the course website, let's go back there really quick if I can manage it without messing up. And there or there, I put it. It is here. Okay, and the handouts again. You will see research log sample 1, sample 2, and then you'll see descriptions. Some of you may have had the Sloan book in your legal writing class in first year. So here's a little bit of description of a strategy for creating a log. Again, because it is so individual, I thought that might be the best way to address the questions that several of you asked. And again, here are the handout links. You will also find our Boolean, what I just distributed. If you lose the piece of paper, it's here as well. Okay. So here we've sorted by date, and we found something a little bit more recent that seems relevant. 2006, still not especially recent, right? Another advanced tip. This will work for secondary sources generally. Within Westlaw, citing references. Basically telling you what later references, could be cases, but could also be other secondary sources, cite to the article you're looking at. This is really useful when you're looking at something kind of on the old side. Like if that 1997 article is great, but kind of old, I would go to citing references and see what later resources cited back to it. So 2006 isn't that old, but we can still see a handful here that are citing back. Actually, that litigating tort cases, we saw that treatise earlier. So here's another way to run across that, since that might be useful. Another one here, this is the Connecticut Insurance Law Journal, so it might be a little state-specific, but might be worth a quick look to see if it helps us. ERISA remedy preemption need for more state regulatory oversight. Anyway, you get the idea. Citing references will get you more recent materials that cite to your kind of on the old side secondary source. And again, that citing references was there when we looked at treatises, was there when we looked at encyclopedias. So an advanced search technique for finding other useful materials. Last but not least, on Westlaw, and you may or may not already know of this, back at our, it's not going to let me go back. Basically going back to our search results. I'm going to return to this there. Search within results. So basically, you do a search, and you realize, or you get a start on your issue. Within whatever results you pull up, so in our case we pulled up 101, you can search within those 101 documents. So if we decided, okay, we got this whole HMO liability, but what about this whole ERISA question thing? So again, we need, with the search within results is the other place where you need to you must do Boolean connectors. You cannot do natural language. You can type in words without the connectors, but your search results will get skewed all over because Westlaw will it will either find all of the words or just one of them. So you need to be more specific without typos preferably. So I'm doing ERISA/P within the same paragraph, preempt, exclamation. Again, so I get preempt, preempted, preemption. Remember /P, when you've got connectors, you need a space on either side. So very technically, I typed ERISA space /P space preempt exclamation. Is there a question or am I in the way again?
No, you're not in the way.
Okay. I'm trying to stay
Yeah,
there.
no, you're.
What, did you have a question? Or
No.
Okay. So, and again, with Westlaw, you have to remember to click on apply filters. It drives me nuts. Okay. Any questions on Westlaw? Advanced searching? Lexis. Pretty much the same. The connectors are the same. One thing you'll notice if you, actually I'm not even sure if it's here. It used to be on Bloomberg. They referred back, see if they still do it, on this Bloomberg handout. The /P and the /S are called proximity connectors. So if you turn to the third page of the handout, about 3/4 of the way down, you'll see proximity. You can also do / and a number. So a number between 1 and 250. So I could say /3 and I would get it within 3 words. I tend to do that when I'm searching for people. Like if I were interested in getting news articles about Hillary Clinton, I might search Hillary /3 Clinton so that I get Hillary Rodham Clinton or just Hillary Clinton, because I don't know, people use maiden names, middle names, whatever. Here it is. On the 4th page is where you see the sentence proximity. Bloomberg lets you do S/ for within the same sentence and P/ for within the same paragraph. But it also lets you do it the norm. What I think of as the normal way, /P/S. I would say just remember that, because Bloomberg will understand it my normal way. I don't know why they mix it up that way. So that's just to let you know that all of these Boolean connectors work the same way on all 3 services. The /S and the /P do not work on Google, and the and or do. Those are classic, and the /P and /S are enhancements that Lexis and Westlaw made, and Bloomberg has just adopted. Okay, so here on Lexis, we'll do just a quick chat on pricing. The concept is the same in terms of the contract. The concept is also the same in terms of when you are outside of your contract, you get charged when you click on a document, not for searching. Where it gets different is that it's simpler. So there's not this per minute per transaction. You just get charged by the document delivery, or document access, they call it. They put their secondary materials into tiers. So it looks like law reviews. You get charged $66 to view a law review article if it's not in your contract. The other difference about Lexis as opposed to Westlaw, for cost purposes, at the moment, you don't get charged for document delivery. So email, downloading, printing, obviously, wherever you're printing, paper, ink, etc. But for now, I suspect that will change. Lexis has very much been playing catch up with Westlaw. Westlaw Next took off and let Lexis in the dust. Then Lexis Advanced came in and was really kind of iffy there for a while. They're finally now beginning to catch up. But what they've been trying to do is make their product more attractive, which is one reason why you all still have free printing from Lexis and do not have it from Westlaw. So they still do not charge even their commercial customers for printing. We'll see. Someday if they start charging, you'll see, wow, she really knew what was coming. Or they never will, and you'll never think of it again. Anyway, the other difference, which I didn't mention yet in Westlaw, so now's a good time. Right now, Shepardizing is free. We have it. We will actually Shepardize in just a couple of minutes. We haven't done it yet. Shepardizing is still free. Again, I have my doubts about how long that will last, because on Westlaw key citing, the equivalent, and we'll talk about actually citing references, when we click on citing references, that is part of Westlaw's key cite. We'll talk more about key citing a lot more when we talk about cases, but also when we talk about statutes. Key citing is not free on Westlaw. You can go to the the pricing chart and see how much it is. I think it's $4 or $5. I'm not even sure of the number. But the point is that it's not free. So that's the other main difference for pricing on Lexis. I'm not going to ask you to remember all this. I'm not going to ask you even to estimate your charges. I just want you to be aware of what costs money for when you do get out into the commercial realm where you will get charged. And again, we'll talk about this throughout the semester about cost-efficient ways of using Lexis and Westlaw. Again, Bloomberg's a flat fee, so once you pay for it, you get as much as you want. Okay. So let's go ahead. Unlike Westlaw, if you want to do an advanced search on Lexis, you don't narrow your content type first. You click on advanced search right here. And it looks like, oh, it's just a regular box here. What you need to do is scroll down, and you will see after you click on advanced search, here's where you can narrow. So let's take a look at the advanced search for law reviews, which honestly is pretty much the same strategy. Law reviews and journals. And just as with Westlaw, in advanced search, to put phrases together, you must use your connectors. So did I remember to... I'm just copying my search here, so you don't have to watch me type it again. I don't want to have to watch me type it again. I'm going to throw that in the title. And notice Lexis populates the search box up here. Do a quick proofread. We're in law reviews and journals. Okay, just as with Westlaw, we can do a search within results. Again, with search within results, whether you've started with advanced search or not, you must use Boolean connectors. So if we had just done our liability HMO search and we wanted to search for ERISA and preemption, we would need that /P if we wanted it to process correctly. We also have sorting capabilities, so we can sort date newest to oldest. And again, that has the advantage and actually to pull up the example, I want to show you I am going to do a search within results, so you'll get to see. All right, so here's actually the same article. And as I mentioned on just a moment ago, you can actually you probably all have you shepherdized before? Okay, shepherdizing sounds like a familiar. I know you probably learned it in legal writing if you remember way back then. You can shepherdize more than just cases, and the advantage of shepardizing secondary sources, not just law review articles, as I already explained on Westlaw, is that you see who else is cited to it. So we can see cases, that's what citing decisions would be, but we can see other citing sources, again, to see more recent resources that have cited to our older but useful title. And again, that works not just for law review articles, but for other secondary sources as well. So you can see other resources that cite to ours that are going to be more recent. Any questions? Bless you. Another feature, call it advanced, that Lexis will sometimes offer, and it kind of just, it's kind of random hit or miss, are these topic summaries. So in a particular topic, if you see this over here below Shepard's, you can check it out and see. Basically, Lexis tries to summarize the topic for you, hence the main topic summary. And this particular topic, pension and benefits, civil litigation cause of suits to recover planned benefits. So that kind of sounds like what we want to do. So another useful sort of side secondary source. You can't count on it being there, but again, if you're looking at the screen and being aware of all of the resources that you're looking at, this topic summary might be very useful for you. Just something to watch out for. Again, I wouldn't count on it being there. Okay, questions? If I can get into Bloomberg. Bloomberg has law review articles, not nearly as many as Lexis or Westlaw. So if you wind up being somewhere that has Bloomberg, then it doesn't cost you anything extra, so it's worth a check. But Bloomberg is, if I'm looking for law review articles, Bloomberg is not the place I'm going to go, and it's not the place I'm going to go because it's being difficult. What I was hoping to show you is how to get to the BNA law reports. As I mentioned, we saw that getting to the BNA law reports through BNA, and that nice tab is going to change for us shortly. You can do that through Bloomberg. But honestly, I'm not going to waste the time to fight with Bloomberg now. Oh, there we go. Actually, BNA law reports. So remember we looked at the healthcare law reporter. Some of you in doing the workshop looked at employment law reporter. There's a social media, for those of you into social media, bunch of different subjects. You can see them listed here. You can search all of them so you don't have to figure out what topic here. You might like Bloomberg better. As I mentioned, the BNA platform has a little more advanced capability, but if this works for you, this is great. And if you have access to Bloomberg, then there's no reason not to use it. Okay. Anybody here not familiar with Hein Online? So I'll take that. You're all okay with Hein Online? Okay. If that's the case, then if it's okay with you, I'm not going to show you what you already know. The one thing I will mention about Hein Online is that if you do wind up working someplace, it is also flat fee. So if you are looking for law review articles, actually Hein Online does have a whole lot else besides law review articles. We'll actually be looking at a couple of the different libraries on Hein Online that aren't law journals or law review articles. But Hein Online, as I said, are flat fee. So again, when you're thinking about cost efficiency, if you have it available, and you can always come back to Hofstra and search it here, Hein Online is a good place to go. Okay, why don't we take a quick break and come back at 5 after 6.
Sorry.
Sure.
What is
I'm just trying to get this recording and stuff. So last but not least, in talking about finding law review articles, as I already referred to, there also is one more tool, and that is an index. And this is going to be true for legal law review articles as well as non-legal, which we will look at in just a bit. On the legal end, how many of you have used the index to legal periodicals? Sort of easy, kind of in a way. The index to legal periodicals kind of like the title search on Lexis and Westlaw, and in many ways better than the title search on Lexis and Westlaw. Better when you have the problem that we talked about, where you're doing a search for law review articles, you do your search in Lexis and Westlaw, and what comes up are articles that have all your terms but have nothing to do with what you're interested in. So that's where the index legal periodicals becomes useful, and that's because indexes typically, I won't say always because there's always some exception, but indexes typically will not search full text. Now you may think to yourself, hey, wait a minute, isn't that always bad not to search full text? And the answer is, if you're finding too many hits or just hits all over the place with your search terms, but not on your issue, it might actually be better not to search the entire full text, but just to search the particular information that describes the topic. So let's take a look at how that works and why it might be useful. So starting here in the library homepage, again, I'm going to use the old version, although you'll find online resources and you'll find topic list on the new version as well. And so what we want when we go on the online subject is we want article finding because we're looking for articles. So hopefully that makes some amount of sense. And then we scroll down to index to legal periodicals. We don't want foreign legal periodicals unless you're doing foreign legal research, but we're sticking with the US. So we want index to legal periodicals. EBSCO is just the name of the database vendor. And because I am on the wireless network with my laptop, as you all are, it's asking me to authenticate remotely. So I am doing that. And voila, we are in. And what you will see with this index is this multi-box format. Anybody remember a site we saw that in earlier this evening? When we were looking for books? Lexicat, yeah, Lexicat Advanced. A catalog is essentially an index to a particular library's holdings, books most of the time, titles. I point this out because essentially the strategy we're going to use here is essentially the strategy we might use on a catalog. So we have this multi-box format, and I'm going to plug in some of our search terms that we've been using. Again, I'm going to make it a simple search this time, except the one thing I'm going to do is that instead of liability, I'm going to put a star there. Anybody know why I'm doing that? Just talked about it.
That gives you like different forms of the word liability.
Exactly. The fancy word for it is truncation, but precisely, it gives you different forms for the word liability, liable, etc. How did I know to put the star in? Other than I've been doing this for a bunch of years, how would you know to put the star in? Not a trick question, a difficult one, but not a trick one. Two things. Probably, well, the most direct way is when you don't know and you think, you know, I need truncation or I need to have different forms of the word. I don't know how to do that on this system because it's not the same on all systems. Lexis and Westlaw use an exclamation and Bloomberg. You would go to the help and you'd navigate to search help. Now that you're taking the class, I will give you the other hint. And that is, other than Lexis and Westlaw, where you use the exclamation, on all these other databases, what I do is I try the asterisk first. I just try the star. I don't know if it's going to work or not. Most databases use the star as their truncation. If it doesn't work, in other words, if I get 0 results or I get crazy results, then I go to the help and navigate through to the search. Being a little bit on the lazy side occasionally, I want to do it the easy way first, so I try the asterisk first. So that's what I would recommend. Okay, so we now have our search terms. So what you see are our results. Again, kind of like Lexis and Westlaw, right? Names of articles. What you are also seeing are the nice thing about the index to legal periodicals lately is that where they have access to it, they will say, hey, if you want to just get the full text right here, you can do it. If you can't get access to the full text, at least what I suggest for the index to legal periodicals is copy the title and then plug it into Lexis or Westlaw. Because more likely than not, the journal will be on Lexis or Westlaw. So, I mean, here it's an HTML. But you might find, you will eventually, if you use the index of legal periodicals, find an article that doesn't have any full text, and then you could do as I suggest and copy and paste to less is less law. The other aspect about the index that we already saw with our other index, also known as catalog, Lexicat, WorldCat, is to search by subject. So remember we saw the subject headings in Lexicat and WorldCat? Well, here are the subjects here. So of the search we did, these articles were assigned these various subject headings. So 53 of our results have healthcare industry malpractice liability. Ooh, that sounds kind of useful, huh? So I might want to find out what those are. So I can limit my results, and now I've got those 53 articles. If I decide, all right, I've looked through these, let's go back to my results, just X out of that, as my mother would say. And we're back here to our 85 results. So again, another tool, if for whatever reason you decide law review articles, if law review articles are going to help me out, I actually know a number of students as well as attorneys who like to start in law review articles. There's so many of them. They'll typically find something kind of close. And of course, as you all know, law review articles will tend to tell you, at least at first, what the law is before the author then launches into what he or she thinks the law should be. So law review articles are great research tools. Not a bad place to start out if that's where you're comfortable or you think you're likely to succeed. So we now have a whole bunch of tools on how to find them, including the index legal periodicals. I do have a workshop for law review articles. I'm going to switch things around a little bit this evening to make sure we fit in everything we need to. So we'll do the workshop at the end of class. But I will leave time, at least some time, for you to at least take a look at some of, do on your own some of the different ways we just talked about for finding law review articles. A couple of things I do want to make sure that I cover, as I promised, non-legal databases. And honestly, non-legal databases are going to be pretty much what we just saw. In fact, EBSCO is one of the database vendors that has a lot of the different non-legal indexes. So it's going to look exactly like this, but instead of searching legal periodicals, it will search non-legal periodicals. Let me show you how to get there. This is so I'm actually just going to go back. We'll go here. Going back to the old version of the library homepage. So you can probably the best way, there are any number of ways of where I'm going is the Axon library database. While you're here at Hofstra, the way to access non-legal databases, the best way are through Axon. So on the library homepage, I go to Research and Instruction, and then I go to Axon Library. And what Axon Library provides us with is something called OneSearch. Now we here in the law library, we cover pretty much one topic, law. There are a lot of subtopics, a lot of different kinds of law, but we're just law. Axon Library runs the gamut. There's business, there's health, there's linguistics, there's social sciences. I don't need to name all the topics, you can think about them. So what they've done, because there are so many different dozens and dozens of different databases, they've provided this OneSearch, which is actually can be quite useful. The other thing they provided is database by subject. So just like we have the topic list for different areas of law, they have the subject list for all the many of the different subjects, 3 of which I've just mentioned. So let's take a quick look at OneSearch. So again, non-legal research, you may need to familiarize yourself with the area of business of your client, of the people you're suing. So as I suggested in the beginning of class, maybe we want to know more about healthcare administration to find out what the standard of care is or how it works, how those decisions got made, so we can then say, hey, look, this person was way out in left field in deciding not to cover our client. They really should have followed the industry practice, but we need to do some research to find out what the industry practice is first. So there's just an example of why you might want to do non-legal research. So, of course, we're not really looking for our legal terms, so I'm interested in our I'm using one of our terms, managed care, plan administration. And again, you need to play around with terms. So I can just throw it in the single box, which is kind of nice, it's easy, and then I can see what comes up is all over the map. Maybe useful, maybe not. Pregnancy outcomes, that's not our issue. Health insurance generosity, conditional coverage evidence, Medicaid, this isn't Medicaid or Medicare. All right, so maybe that didn't work so well. Always going to try the advanced search, and as I mentioned, that looks familiar, right? We just saw that on indexed legal periodicals, because this is the same company, and they tend to look the same, the advanced search. The multi-box, they may not have the same colors or the same shape, but pretty much the same idea. So maybe I want to try something a little bit different. We know we want managed care. And again, this is just playing around with terms. There's no magic. We're worried about coverage, right? And we're worried about denial of coverage. So I put my terms in the 3 different boxes. Again, good to avoid typos if you can. More importantly, good to proofread, or more relevant. Okay, so here we go. External review of coverage denials by managed care. Okay, this is in California. Bummer. But maybe I'm going to see if there's something better before I start reading about how it works in California, because we're not in California. Again, Medicaid, not really interesting. Health reform, accountable care, challenges, managed care in a public setting, Medicaid, consumerism. So again, okay, there's children. So again, we would just go through and see what's there. Kind of iffy on the relevance, right? Outpatient review, peer reviewers help. That might be interesting, actually. Another strategy is to use databases by subject. And as nice as that one search is, I have to say, when I have used it, I often don't have success. I run into, because we're just searching so many different types of databases. Honestly, what I tend to do when I need to do non-legal research is I go to a particular database. And it's actually a general interest database, interestingly enough. So I'm going to click on Go. And that database is Academic Search Complete. I just get good results with it, so I want to share that with you. What might happen when you're first going to this database is, again, you may get that remote authentication screen like I had. Just type in well, actually, you'll get a different remote authentication screen. It might be the, ask you to go through the portal, because we're going through Accent now. So you all have logged into the portal many times, so I don't think you have to worry about that. But again, same database vendor. It looks those 3 boxes, but this time instead of all of the different databases Accent has access to, we just have this one I'm recommending. And so again, whoops, helps if you type in the box. Managed care, and I'm going to do the same search. Coverage. Denial. Yeah, so devil in the details. Managed care, unforeseen cost of utilization review. We've actually seen that phrase a few times. So again, utilization review. So a few, again, where they have it, you'll see the PDF, so you can just pull up the article. Again, you won't always see it, unfortunately. So, for instance, speak of the devil, enrollee appeals of pre-service coverage denials at 2 HMOs. Sound relevant? Okay, A few of you are sort of agreeing. I'll take that as a yes. But we do not have a PDF, and this isn't legal, so we're likely not to find it on Lexis and Westlaw. Anybody know what to do? Some of you who work on journals might have encountered this, where you run into an article, non-legal article, and you don't know where to find it. Oh, it's not that bad. Much better than microfilm. I won't point you to microfilm. Yeah, you could Google it, honestly. Absolutely. If that doesn't work. Yay! Absolutely. But if it's 2 in the morning on a snowy evening, Journal Finder. If 2 in the morning on a snowy evening, that's not going to work either. Journal, anybody use Journal Finder? Sound familiar to you? Journal Finder is, again, an Axon tool that helps you find specific articles. So you're only going to use Journal Finder if you have a specific title. So if you want to use Journal Finder, so if we were interested, that particular article we were looking at was from JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association. Let's see if it pulls up. See if it pulls that up, or if I have to type out the whole thing. No, I don't have to type out the whole thing. I just have to scroll a little. So the nice thing about Journal Finder is I don't have to figure out which database it's in. I just plug in the title of my journal. I have to, again, already have an article. I have to have written down the journal name as well as the citation in order to find it. And then it looks like we here at Hofstra do have full text access. Say that 10 times fast. And clicking on the website it tells me to click on. And then it's going to take me to different websites. So this is the JAMA website. But notice it knows where I'm from. And that's because Hofstra University, do have access. So we've subscribed and paid all the money we're supposed to pay. So they're saying, hey, come on in and you can use our journal. So basically, I would have jotted down the citation to that article we saw that we wanted to see but didn't get full text access from Academic Search Complete, and I just follow my nose for the right year and then the right issue. So I happen to have jotted down that one somewhere here. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing. It was a 2003, so just to sort of get you started, I'd go to the 2000s, and then I'd go to 2003, and having already jotted down, I just followed. I think you're all pretty good at that, so... And yes, absolutely, Google would be what I would do first. Google may or may not, it would get us to JAMA for sure, but because we're coming outside, of the Hofstra web page system, so we haven't authenticated, we may get to JAMA, but it may not give us the full text. If I were to click through for that article, I would get that article because, as I said, we've paid everything we're supposed to pay. So definitely Google, but even after you Google and you're getting the, please, log in or please pay us $15 or $300 or whatever they're asking for, try Journal Finder. Google first, absolutely, it's easier, but don't forget, if Google doesn't work, Journal Finder. Okay. Last but not least on non-legal research is, believe it or not, your favorite public library. How many of you have library cards to your favorite public library? Excellent. Did you know you could access online databases from your favorite public library's webpage? You did. Good for you. Oh, good. They're doing better. Even as recently as last year, nobody in my class, smaller group, but if any of you didn't know, get your library card. And you can go to your favorite public library, well, your local, and somewhere here I have the Long Beach Public Library. And I can wend my way through for research and search databases by subject. And just to give you a sense of what Long Beach has, which most of Nassau County will have similar because the libraries sort of pool together to subscribe to some of these. So if we were interested, government law actually, at least Long Beach isn't so great. I don't know if some of the libraries may differ. But health and medicine, which is relevant to us, and if we're interested in non-legal, so I might try ProQuest health management. That's what we're talking about, right? Health management. Or I might try health and wellness, and I would just click at home and I plug in my barcode number, and you don't need to watch me type. Just know that this is available. And they're actually, I mean, you can scroll through, and not just for health and medicine. I mean, just take a look at these topics. There's genealogy if you're into that. So a decent selection, business. At some point, you'll probably have to do some business investigation. We'll talk about business research later. But again, from the comfort of your home in your pajamas, you can do a little non-legal research. Any questions? So that basically is secondary sources. So we've been through, gotten a sense of where to start, encyclopedias, right? And then perhaps treatises to ALR is kind of a hybrid, remember. It might be a good place to start. For our issue it was. Might try law review articles. We've seen how to, some of the advanced searching for Lexis, Westlaw, Bloomberg, not so much because of our access issues. We've talked a little bit about choosing our terms and how computers might be stupid. So cat and feline and healthcare, managed care, HMO, health maintenance organization. Try them. There's no way of knowing in advance until you try them. The reason why my searching has worked mostly is because I spent a lot of time trying the different alternatives and figured out, oh good, this one works, this is what we'll use. It's exactly what you will need to do. We talked about the table of contents. Don't forget the table of contents. Really useful, especially in treatises. You won't have a table of contents in every resource. ALR, there isn't one because the articles all get thrown together in the volume regardless of subject, so there's no table of contents. Okay, so what I'd like to do is spend a little bit of time reviewing assignment 1 and how it all works, and then we'll leave time to do a workshop on law reviews, and we'll definitely be out of here at 7. So I'm just going to steal. So logistics, let's start with logistics while that's going around. So here on our Twin site, there is a link for assignments, and if all has gone well, you will all see assignment 1. You will want to download assignment 1 from Twin, most likely, so that you can use, it's in Word format, so basically you can download it and use that document to fill in your answers. So the one thing you'll want to do after you've downloaded is make sure to put your name on it. You will email it back to me, so yes, I will have your email and be able to figure it out, but it will make it a lot easier if you have your name on top. So that's not all that difficult. More importantly, make sure to answer all parts. It breaks my heart when I go through an assignment and a student has just forgotten to answer a part of a question. So take a look, turn the page. We'll talk about what's on the front page in a sec. And you'll see, sometimes they're pretty straightforward. Part A is just 1 through 8. But if you turn the page, Part C, Part 5 has 5 individual parts. Important to read thoroughly and carefully. That's what you have to do as lawyers anyway, so practice those skills now. And if you don't understand how I've structured a question, we'll be looking at Part D in a moment because that's a little funky. Ask. In fact, if there's anything I can tell you now about doing this assignment, it's ask. Ask me. Really, you might think, oh no, I'll do this assignment. If I ask a stupid question, my grade will, no, it won't. In fact, if you ask me questions on the assignment, that gets counted as A+ toward class participation. No stupid question, really. I've gone through a ton of stuff tonight, gone through a ton of stuff last week, went through a bunch of stuff the week before that. It can get a little jumbled, I get that. Ask, really. And what happens is, if several of you ask a question, the same question, that tells me, uh-oh, a bunch of people aren't getting this, maybe I need more explanation. So I will either email you with explanation, or I'll give you more thorough explanation in the next class. So definitely, please ask. So it breaks my heart when a student doesn't fill out all of the questions, because I will do my best to give you credit. But if you don't give me anything, if there's 0 words there, I can't give you any credit for that question. The other, ask. If you're confused, I've had invariably, sometimes there's a student, I can tell by the answers that are just confused, and it breaks my heart because if they come ask me, like, even I just don't get this. It's totally fine. I will do my best to explain. If I'm not around, if it's just could you remind me how to find treatises on Lexis? The reference librarians will be happy to help you. By the way, you are welcome to work together. But what I need you to do, each and every one of you, to get credit is to email me your own answer set, and some of those answers need to be individual. So some of the answers are going to be straightforward, actually more so in later assignments. But when I ask you what your search is, you probably should try different searches. When I ask you what to evaluate, definitely should be your own evaluation. Okay, so that so email your answers. I have that on the instructions up front. You may work together. Answers must be your own. Different searches, different evaluation. As I said, I'm not a Bluebook person. You all know more about the Bluebook than I do. When you give me a citation to something, give me a citation that makes it as easy for me to find it as I can. If I have to start struggling to find what you're referring to, I may not find it, which means I may not be able to give you full credit. So, I mean, law review is pretty straightforward. Give me the title, give me the citation. Encyclopedia, give me the subject, torts or healthcare, excuse me, and give me section so-and-so. Again, I don't need all the commas and periods because I don't know the book anyway. So what I have done on the first page is you have your issue. Everybody has the same issue. These days, since you're all doing it online anyway, you don't have to worry about everybody needing the same book. And then, so turn the page on page 2. First, I will ask you to look at encyclopedias. So I'm asking you to look at one of the national encyclopedias, and I'm lumping ALR as an encyclopedia. So ALR, AmJur, or CJS, just one of those 3, not all 3, and New Yorker. We're going to be in New York. Makes sense to get to know New Yorker. Then you get to choose Lexis or Westlaw. Just tell me which one you choose. You can use print if you prefer. If you use print, then you won't be answering questions 1 or 2, but I will ask you on question 6 to also answer for AmJur, CJS, or ALR. That's if you choose to use print, and if you're choosing to use print and that's confusing, just come ask me. So question 1, you're going to use a plain language search. Question 2, you're going to try terms and connectors. By terms and connectors, I mean Boolean, and, or, /p/s, what we just went over. The connectors on the Bloomberg handout, you don't have to use all of them. I told you the major ones. In fact, those are the ones I use 99% of the time, honestly. I ask you your best results. I ask you the steps you took to get the results. So you might say, I first narrowed to secondary sources and I chose encyclopedias. Or you might say, I ran my search and then on the post-search filter, I chose secondary sources and then I narrowed to encyclopedias. Or you might say, I did my search and I went to secondary sources and the first result that came up was AmJur and it was great and I loved it. So it was, yeah, question.
For like the first few, do you just want like bullets or whole sentences? Like we just say the sources we found? Do you want like just describe each process?
Either way.
Okay.
What I will say as you look, do your searching and look through spend some time to find sources that sound like they answer the question, but don't spend forever. Don't spend hours. This, as I mentioned in the first class, as you were here, this is a research class, so it's very different than every other class you've taken in that the relevance is kind of less important, which is weird, and it's not what real life practice is. But for our purposes, I want you to spend your time researching, not analyzing. You've done that in the rest of your law school career and continue to do so. So you'll get your practice there. So I'm asking you, question 3, your best results. So again, look at it, see what you can find, but don't spend forever. Describe the steps, bullet point, numbered. I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just a paragraph, totally okay. I want you to look at the table of contents. I keep on telling you how wonderful they are, so of course I'm going to ask you to look. Again, if you don't remember how to get there, those are the references can help, I can help, don't hesitate. Look at your juror, ask you what terms you used. I ask you to skim the references and footnotes and find, if you can, a relevant case in New York and federal. And again, make your best judgment, don't spend a lot of time. And then I ask you to rate the encyclopedia, and again, those rate evaluation questions should be your own answers. Don't, I mean, you can chat with each other, that would be great, but give me your own evaluation. Ask you to, part B, go to web resource. Part C, law reviews, which we just discussed. So I'm asking you to choose the database. So what, if you chose Lexis for the encyclopedias, use Westlaw for law review articles. Again, I want you to be comfortable on both. We're not getting into Bloomberg quite yet because Bloomberg doesn't have as many of these materials. Again, part 5 has multiple subparts. Ask you to do some compare and which is more effective. You'll see some word limitations. These word limitations should be way more than you need, but I have had in the past, and hopefully that won't be true, folks who just want to say everything they could possibly think of in hopes that something will stick. So I want you to think a little bit about narrowing down. So if you're going over the word limit, think about what you're saying to narrow. If you're really having a hard time with the word limit, come talk to me. I don't expect you will. Over time, I've increased it gradually to make it easier. I'm not trying to make it hard for you. I'm just trying to get you to think about your answer and make it as relevant as possible. Part D is a little funky, as I mentioned, asking you to look at treatises. I basically want you to look at all of the sources I've mentioned. So library catalog, IntelliConnect we did last time. Cheetah, ignore Cheetah. When I put together this, I thought, again, we were moving to a new platform, just like we saw with the library website. And with Lexis, eventually, but that's not the case. We don't have Cheetah. So what we saw in IntelliConnect last time, that's what you'll do. Lexis, Westlaw, Bloomberg, and Google Books we just saw. So for question 1, look at all of those sources and list just titles for treatises that may look relevant. If you don't find any relevant for a particular source, it's okay to say that. When I say a few titles, I mean titles, a few from all of the different sources you're looking at. So you're looking at 6 different places, find a few. If you find one in each, great, but that may not be the case. And then 2 for treatises, just for 1 through 5, not Google Books. So you're done with Google Books. Answer these questions. So basically from 1 through 5, you're going to pick the best title you found. And then you're going to answer the questions 2A through E for just that one title. You don't have to answer it for 3 titles or 5 titles, just one title. Don't make yourself, this assignment's going to take you a little while. It's going to take you a number of hours. Don't give yourself more work than is necessary. Part E, legal news and BNA. We went over that last time. Again, if it was sketchy, by all means ask. And part F, I ask you to evaluate the various different resources, to rate them and to justify your rating, and then what would you recommend? So I want to spend, well, I want to first see if there are any questions, most importantly. And again, to minimize your spinning wheels, spend a minute reading the hypothetical on the first page and tell me, I'm going to ask you what you think the issue is. Done, look up. Anybody? So now you have two clients. You have one who wants to sue an HMO. What does this client do? Okay, so to do what? Label product. So is this a product liability issue? Is there a product to be liable for?
Yeah.
Does it exist yet?
Well, she has, she has like a prototype, she has it.
Or has anybody used it and?
No.
Okay. That's the main thing I want to have you avoid is investigating the product liability avenue. There might be someday. But at the moment, we're talking about advertising, as Danielle said. Just repeat what you said, Danielle.
Well, we want to be sure that our client isn't almost advertising on their future product. Or they don't want to be liable for false advertising. So we're going to advise them on how to avoid it.
Okay, but false advertising in commercials or?
On a label of a new product.
Okay. Any questions? Again, please don't hesitate as you start to do this if you do have questions. So for the last few minutes, let's take a closer look. I'm going to give you an opportunity since I covered a bunch of different sources for law reviews.
Thank you.
I know this is a long one. Secondary sources, because there's so many different types of secondary sources and there are so many different places and different things. There's just a lot of different types of resources. As we move on in the course, there'll be more of an understandable beginning, middle, and end of the unit, for lack of a better explanation. So for the workshop distributed, going around, probably at best you'll have time only for the bold questions. What I would actually ask you to do first, which is weird because it's the last question, is question 7, and that's the question on the index of legal periodicals. And the reason I'm asking you to do that first is I think that's what you will have the most difficulty with when you do the assignment. So now it's a good opportunity to get some practice. And if you have time for the other questions, fabulous. Yeah. Does that make sense? Absolutely. That's probably one of the most difficult parts. So to access the index to legal periodicals, we will start with the library homepage. So you can all get here, right? Excellent. Actually, you should be able to do. Really, I should have checked to see if this worked first. No, that doesn't work. That's why I have to show you. I wanted to show you the easy way. Sometimes that search box works, sometimes it doesn't. So that's the easy way. But that didn't work for ILP, Index Legal Periodicals. So now we go the slightly more complicated way, and that's to go to, you could go to alphabetical list and just look it up under I. That's probably the easiest way, actually. We went through topic list and then looked at article finding. And what you want to be very careful is to go to the index to legal periodicals. Either of these entries are fine. You don't want foreign is what you want to be careful about. No foreign. We're staying in the U.S. for now. And again, I have to log in again because it logged me out. So the authentication for that, if you're having trouble, is your first name, last name, and your 700 number. See, excellent question. Several of you had it.
Try that. See what happens.
Hopefully that's an object lesson to ask questions. Where is my cat?
No, this is
Anybody else having trouble? Speak up, wave hands, jump up and down, scream. Bold part first, but if you can get to the B part. I'm going to stop